Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale Batman 1989 figure unboxing and review. Today, we're taking a look at the 2.0 version of the Dark Knight himself, Michael Keaton as Batman. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Batman figure review goes live on the channel. I was prepared for a large box. I was not expecting this. This box is absolutely enormous. I'm 100% sure that the reason for the size of the box is not the figure, it's the diorama display base, because I did opt for the deluxe version. Styling the artwork to make it look like the Bat Vault where Keaton keeps his suits was a very clever idea, and I reckon it's worked. The artwork is simple, but very effective. We've got the rivets top and bottom, the raised bat symbol in the middle, and his name down below, which is also raised just like the symbol. On the side of the box, we've got his name, a bat symbol, and deluxe version in metallic silver foil, as well as this almost scratched looking metal effect in the background. And the entire box does have a subtle metallic finish to it, so when light bounces off the surface, the detail does pop. They've lent heavily into this Bat Vault aesthetic, and around the front it worked because the artwork was pretty simple, but around the back with the brick wall motif and the two gargoyles from the diorama display base and the bat signal in the sky, this stuff doesn't work for me as much. Just a simple bat symbol would have done the trick. We also have warnings, legal information, as well as Hot Toy store locations. Why is it that it's always the biggest boxes that end up copping the biggest beating from DHL? This one had corner protectors on it, and it was bubble wrapped, and it was in an outer box. Still, it's been through some shit, man. Every corner is dented, we've got creases on the front cover, and even a little tear on the side of the box. Luckily, I don't really care about pristine packaging. I would prefer it, but at the end of the day, all I really care about is what's inside the box. Whoa, this guy has quite a spread. You can see all of the accessories laid out right alongside Batsy. I dig the rounded edges for the open window, again leaning quite heavily into the Bat Vault aesthetic. Keeping it simple for the inside box I see Hot Toys, we've got a grey bat symbol, just on a satin black background. Hands down, the coolest piece of artwork on the entire box. I wouldn't mind a poster that looks like this, just showcasing the various bat gadgets. And the entire inner box is covered in that satin finished rubberized coating that makes this box feel very premium. I'm fairly certain we're all here to find out the answer to the same question. Is this new 2.0 Batman better or worse than the DX09? There's only really one way to properly answer that. Let's get him out here. Holy shit. It's all base. If you lift out the clam tray that Batman sits in, the entire rest of the box is dedicated to the diorama display base. I'm getting pretty nervous trying to figure out how I'm going to fit the base in the display, but that's a future Justin problem. All I'm focused on right now is taking a look at this guy and comparing him to the DX09. First in-hand impressions? Oh, he is very different. I'm already noticing quite a few changes. For the better, we'll just have to wait and see on that. What we're going to do now is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Normally, when we start off with the base first, I just pick it up and we start talking about it. But that's not going to be possible with this base because it's too big to do that with. So let's reframe this shot, ditch all this other stuff, and then we can start off with the display base. I can't get over how big this base is. They were clearly going after statue-level presence with a diorama base this massive. Were they successful in capturing that level of presence? Well, we'll have to wait and see a little bit later when we pop Batman both inside and on top of the diorama base. I like that they kept the bottom edge of the base pretty consistent with the old school DX square bases. This looks relatively similar to what we received with DX09 and what we're getting with the standard version of this new and improved 89 Batman. Except for this base, it's been dioramified. We still have the beveled edges and the step down with the nameplate on it, but now the edge looks like it's made of stone or concrete, and we've got the wood panel flooring up on top, with the staircase off to the right-hand side. If you wanted to, you could have the base displayed like this. There's plenty of room on this ledge for Batman to stand on it. And the detail is great even back here. We've got the brickwork with a grey dry brush over the top, green weathering in the crevices, and some brown and black washes just to sink into that sculpted detail. We've got one gargoyle drain head with a pipe sticking out of it, another that's broken, and a bunch of rubble just sitting on the ledge. Easily my favourite feature of this base, the gargoyle is articulated, I guess is how we could describe him, but the circular base that it sits on can rotate round. So now displaying it backwards makes even more sense because you can rotate the gargoyle and then you can see the front of it. Or if you want to have it off to the side, also doable. He's painted in the same exact way as the stone walls, so we've got the dry brushing and the green airbrush shading and the washes as well. Just icing on the cake at this point, the gargoyle is also removable. So if you find that you can't quite fit the base into the cabinet because you don't have the vertical real estate required to make that happen, you can take him off and then, fingers crossed, you'll be able to make this work. However, if you do have the vertical real estate to play with, you could very easily have Batman standing on this perch, and then you can pop Joker inside the base and make it look like Batman is about to pounce down on him. The instructions don't specifically mention this, but the ports are the same size for both the crotch grabber and the chunk of wood that you have to install that makes up the broken railing for the staircase. So if you want to flip them around and have the chunk of wood covering up the peg port at the back of the base, but the crotch grabber facing inwards so you can support Batman as he's walking up the steps, you can 100% try that out. Or you can remove the chunk of wood, install another crotch grabber into the base, then you could have two figures standing on this bottom platform. Just one more cheeky close-up of the sculpt work and paint. I don't want to stop shooting this thing. Visually speaking, it's just very impressive. They've even fully sculpted and painted the underside of the ledge that's normally not really going to be very visible. This is probably my new favorite Hot Toys diorama base, because it not only looks good, but it's practical, it's functional, and it's somewhat modular. Long story short, they killed it with this diorama base. Normally, I'd be saying, well, they should also include the standard base if we're going to get something this large in the box. I'm not going to say that this time because this base is almost perfect in my opinion. Now we do get these plastic rods. They're literally just that, nothing special really. They're meant to be inserted into his cape. There's some pockets that you can slide these into so that you can have his arms outstretched as though he's spreading out his cape on either side of him. For production in the movie, they actually did use poles like this to make that happen. So technically, this is not something that Hot Toys just invented. This is movie accurate. We will try this out on him a little bit later. I'll be as brief as possible when discussing the Bat gadgets, otherwise we're going to be here all day because he comes with a ton of little parts and pieces. We've seen most of this stuff with the DX09 anyway. This is the stopper, I guess you could call it, that shoots out of his gauntlet towards the end of the movie. To install it, you slide it between his gauntlet and the body, and we'll try that just like the poles later on in the video. It's painted in glossy black, we've got some sculpt work front and back, and even some sculpted rivets on the underside. This, some people saw as a cross-sell when we got DX09 because they announced the Batmobile and they actually teased it on the box for DX09. This is the remote for the 89 Batmobile. He uses this in the movie to say stop, if you recall. There's a grille, front and back, we've got a red dot on either side, and a little bat logo up front. These two accessories go hand in hand because you can store the grappling gun on his belt. There's a magnet in this piece, whereas the front part has to be hooked up to this little clip mechanism. Then you can slide it over his belt. I won't be using this clip ever because I did with the DX09 and it irreversibly damaged the belt. It chewed it up and now it looks terrible. So that piece can be relegated to an accessory tub perhaps. You can flip down the handle on the grappling gun, and seeing as though this is a reused mold from DX09, mold degradation is starting to rear its ugly head. This handle does not want to stay in place, unfortunately. We've got some silver paint on this side. The dart part is not removable, so please don't try and take it off. But I do like the way it's been painted. Vicky Vale's high heel shoe is a new accessory for this 2.0 Batman. It's fine. It's a high-heeled shoe, so I don't plan on displaying him with it. I'm probably just going to pop this somewhere on the display base as some set dressing. Let me know in the comments below, do you plan on using this shoe with Batman, or are you also going to have it on the base? This has to be my favourite accessory of the bunch. It's from the museum scene, I adore that scene, and it's just a sick looking accessory. It's got spikes at the front and on the underside. You can move these pieces out because it's a line launcher, so you want it to be able to articulate. Plus there's a real working spring on the inside. Maybe don't have it permanently folded up like this because that is putting a lot of pressure on that spring as it's being expanded. I'm going to have it like this, that way the spring isn't going to be damaged long term. This slides over his forearm, the loop is somewhat flexible, there's a bit of give to it, so you can move it outwards, then slide this over the batsuit. I should say you can move the side parts of the ring outwards. Don't, try and move the whole thing. His Batarang doesn't fold up. I really would have liked to have seen a folding Batarang this time. But the sculpt work is sharp, and it's got some sharp, I'm so sorry, points down below painted in silver. The cable or the string could be removed if you want to untie that knot. I don't plan on doing that because it's a really tiny knot, and chances are I won't be able to do that back up. On the other end, we've got a real metal ring. This is tiny, this little detonator. We've got zeros on the screen, some black paint in the grips, a little wire up top, a black wash in the sculpted grille work, and some gold paint around the front. Like I said, it's tiny, but this thing is extremely well painted for as small as it is. Someone told me in my DX09 re-review that these little darts are actually smoke pellets. And that, I guess, makes sense because there's this little translucent section on the bottom of all three of them. But I don't remember him using any darts like this in the movie. It's been a while since I've seen it. If you do remember him using it, let me know what scene that was in down in the comments below. I can't imagine Batman would use shuriken nowadays. But back in Burton's Batman 1989, he absolutely did, and these prickly little devils are also well painted. We've got silver for the main body, gold in the middle, and a black wash around that sculpted gold circle. I know I've said well painted way too many times already, but that's a good thing. That just means that they're putting a lot of budget into making sure things look as good as possible. So we do get 3 interchangeable mouth plates. We will be trying out all 3 of these on him when we bring him out here. And lastly, a full array of reused DX09 hands. Except they have painted them slightly differently this time. Instead of going with an all matte finish, they've added a sheen to the mix. So we do have some matte sections and the silver dots on the palms, but now there's a lot more shine to them, and that does add to the leathery look. I don't know about y'all, I prefer the way the new ones have been painted. So, first cab off the rank, we've got some open palm slash gripping hands of sorts that you could use for either the poles for his cape or maybe the bat shuriken. Two actual open palm hands, and I never noticed with DX09 that they've sculpted in this rough texture underneath the dots that are raised. That's not just paint, these dots are properly sculpted on the surface. A grapnel gun holding hand for the right side and a splayed out finger hand for the left, and two closed fists already installed on him out of the box. What we're going to do now is get Batman himself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. This figure was so close to being an utter failure because of one big design change. The suit texture. No matter which way you look at it, no matter how you light it, it's just not right. The suit should be smooth. We'll dive deeper into it in a moment. For now, just know that yes, I see it, and no, I'm not happy. It doesn't stop there though. The sculpt might be a downgrade versus DX09, we'll have to compare to see for sure, and the belt is probably the wrong color. So, does this guy have any redeeming qualities at all? Yes, he's not all bad. The cape, the accessories, the diorama base, and the proportions, now we can get his arms down by his side sitting flush, all huge W's. Is there enough here to entice those of us who own the DX09 to replace him with this? Possibly. The better way of looking at it would be as either a compliment to the DX09 if you already own him, or a stand-in for him if you're a new collector but have always loved the Burton films. I know it sounds like I'm dancing around, not really being definitive as to whether or not he's any good. That's because I haven't quite made up my mind yet. Up close and personal, kicking things off with Batman's cowl. They've changed a lot with this new head sculpt. I thought that it would be like a rehash of the DX09 with a couple of tweaks and changes, maybe just a new symbol and some new mouth plates. But that couldn't be further from what they've done. Some things they've changed are for the better, others not so much. We'll start with the good stuff first, and then we'll move on to some of the things they maybe should have left alone. Number one, I like the new texture. It's softer, it's less HD, which is actually more movie accurate. There's also now a sheen to the cowl, which is spot on. The bat symbol is also more accurate. The little tail actually hits the bottom of the oval, which it's supposed to. The shape and size of it is wider versus taller. And they've used a brighter yellow paint, so the symbol does stand out more. They've done away with the panel on the back of the cowl. That was an absolute eyesore on the original. Now you take off the cowl to move the eyes around. And they've widened the top part of the temples just a bit. And that, for me, does make this look more like the screen-used 89 cowl. However, the one big complaint I have is the mouth plates. The mouth plates just aren't as Keaton looking as compared to what we got with the original. This one, I mean, there's too much upper lip showing. It doesn't look like Keaton to me. When you angle the cowl forward or you have him like at a 3/4 turn, then I start to see Keaton like right there. It's nowhere near as spot on as the DX09 mouth plates were. We will try out the old mouth plates in the new cowl. Let's start by popping some of the alternative mouth plates that come with this cowl in there first. Oh no! This one is even worse than the standard mouth plate. It looks like Val Kilmer to me. I don't know if that's maybe what they were going for. I can't really see Michael Keaton from any angle. I'm trying, I'm hunting around for it. It's just not coming through for me. One thing that's worth noting is that the paint is better on these new mouth plates. The teeth look more realistic. They've got a subtle translucency to them. There's a 5 o'clock shadow down below, some shading. That doesn't do enough to save these mouth plates for me. The sculpt alone just makes the DX09 one superior. I finally found a mouth plate that I like with this new release. This one with the actual glossy wet battle damage on his cheek and chin, and the smirk with the smaller gap between the nose of the cowl and the upper lip that is sticking out to give him that Michael Keaton pout almost. Yeah, I can see the likeness, and I'm probably going to end up displaying this figure wearing this mouth plate long term. I am curious to find out what moving the eyes around does for some of these mouth plates. Let's give that a go. You do need to remove the cowl every time you want to switch out the mouth plates or move the eyes. With the DX09 cowl, you didn't have to do that because of the big ugly door around the back, and the mouth plates were on magnets versus this peg mechanism, so you could just run your thumb across the front of them, they'd slide out of the cowl, then you could pop the new one in. I prefer the magnet mechanism versus the peg, even though yes, this is quite secure. They give you a tool to use to move the eyes around. You can see the little individual joysticks in there, but I prefer to just use my finger. That way I'm not having to hunt for a tool every time I want to adjust the eye position. I think this mouthplate works best with his eyes looking up at us, because that way the nose obscures the gap between the upper lip and then the underside of it, and we can use that smirk to our advantage. He looks properly mean with this eye position and this mouthplate. Can we find the likeness by moving the eyes off to the side, perhaps, with this mouthplate in? It is better, especially when you have them off to the side and up. I don't think it looks anywhere near as good as the talking slash smirking mouthplate on the DX09 cowl. Let me know down in the comments below, do you like this one? Is it just me? Or is it genuinely not as good as the old mouthplates and some of the new ones? Something about this cowl is reminding me of the Blitzway Prime 1 Batman 1989 cowl. I'm not sure if I'm going crazy for thinking that. Maybe it's the way it's painted and the subtle tan on the mouthplates that's doing it. Could also be the texture on the cowl. It's screaming Prime 1 Batman 89 cowl. Some people might like that, others probably won't. Because I did see quite a few people complaining about that sculpt, saying that the likeness was off to Michael Keaton. Anyway, DX09 mouthplates in this cowl, let's get that done. Now this is more like it. The DX09 mouthplates are almost compatible with this new cowl. I popped some blue tack behind it because don't forget, the old mouthplates were magnetic. The new cowl uses that peg mechanism, so if you just pop that in there, it is not going to sit in place. Use some blue tack and then it will properly sit inside the cowl. There is a gap around the edge, but there's a gap around the edge with the stock mouth plates anyway. It's the bottom one under his chin that I find the most egregious. Then again, if you tilt the head sculpt forward, that does look like how Michael Keaton looked in the movie. There was a gap under his chin in most scenes. Also pretty good. Not quite as perfect as the stock just neutral mouthplate was from DX09 in the new cowl. You could do a hell of a lot worse than this. If you want to have him posed up as though he's talking to the Joker, this mouthplate might be the one for you. Once again, blue tack behind it, otherwise it is not going to sit inside this head sculpt. I'm just having fun at this point. This is the DX09 cowl on the body. Say you prefer the older style bat symbol and the texture on this cowl and the mouth plates, the way they fit in the OG DX09 one. You could try and fashion some kind of neck connector to make this happen. As it stands, there's a ball joint underneath the cowl, a ball joint in the body. You're going to need something to pop inside and connect the two. Hey, you know what? This isn't half bad. This is the Mars Toys Bruce Wayne head sculpt. I'm considering picking up another Mars Toys Bruce. That way I can have my DX09 displayed with the cowl on, and this guy displayed wearing this head sculpt. Back to stock. I'll stop messing around now. This is the normal new mouth plate inside the new cowl. It's cape time. Is this cape any good, is the question. Have they finally redeemed themselves from those awful ones that they included with the other Michael Keaton Batman figures DX09 and the Batman Returns release? The answer is yeah, it's pretty good. This time it's made of this super lightweight fabric. There's the stitched in spines. We also have this almost suede-like texture on the surface, which isn't movie accurate, but it looks good. It's wired in 3 places on either side in the spines and also around the front. Plus we've got the slots that you can slide those poles into. It's flexible and lightweight enough that you can pull off the half-half look, which wasn't really possible with the stock DX09 cape. I've seen some people work wonders with that trash bag of a thing, but I've never been able to get it to look good. Whereas with this, it's quite easy actually. It's nowhere near as good as a custom Jaxon Xu / Unreal Toys cape, but it's a marked improvement over what they gave us with the other 2 Keaton Batman figures. Oh, and there is some sculpted detail on the underside, on the armor itself, with this really bumpy, lumpy, uneven look to the back of the suit. We will try out some custom capes on him, just because I'm curious to see what they do for the figure. But he is displayable like this. I'm not holding this cape in place, I promise you. It's just draping there, it's doing what it needs to, without getting in your way too much. Okay, let's discuss the elephant in the room. This suit should not be as textured as it is. They went crazy on the texture. It's all craggly looking. We've got these divots, and that's not how it's supposed to look. The armor is meant to be smooth. I've got no idea what kind of reference Hot Toys had for this suit, but the texture is even dialed up compared to DX09, which already had too much texture. They shouldn't have added even more of it. They should have dialed it back, and then the armor plating would have been more accurate. We'll discuss this more in the pros and cons segment, but you see these little wrinkles sculpted in? And it is sculpted because this entire suit is a single piece of rubber. It's not supposed to be that. It's meant to be individual rubbery armor pieces glued on top of latex or maybe urethane covered spandex. That way, Keaton and the stunt performers had some more flexibility when it comes to action / fight scenes. Doing it like this means that it's going to be way more restrictive, and it lacks that difference in contrast between the undersuit and the armor plating. The gauntlets are free floating, so you can adjust them, but the fins being painted in gunmetal doesn't seem right to me. I'm 99% sure these are just supposed to be black. Coming down to the belt, some people have said that this is the exact same mold as the DX09. It isn't. The belt buckle is slightly larger, and this time, the canisters are movable. They're hooked on around the back, so you can slide them back if you want, or you can bring them more around the front. It's entirely up to you. The only issue I have with the belt is it's not an accurate color. I've looked at a bunch of reference pics, I've seen the movie countless times. The belt is supposed to be more of a darker gold versus this very bright in-your-face yellow. They have added a wash in the sculpted line work for the belt buckle. That too is not quite right. There shouldn't be a wash there. It's meant to be gold, and shadows should be playing their part in making those lines stand out. There is a magnet in the side of the belt, and you're meant to be able to use that to holster the grappling gun. Then you can bring in this piece and slide it on the belt. I'm not going to do that. Like I said in the accessory segment, that clip is going to absolutely destroy this soft rubbery belt material. If you did want to slide it on, you could move this canister around the back. Then you should have enough room to fit both of these pieces on the belt. There's just so much texture on this suit. How did they get it this wrong? Batman has been out since frickin' 1989. They've had plenty of time to study the screen-used costume. There is no excuse for this. In an ideal world, everything would be 100% accurate and 100% resemble the screen used costume. With this figure, it's not accurate, but it does resemble the suit from a distance because the outfit is quite dark and not under harsh studio lighting like this. The texture isn't as prominent as it is right now through the lens. Still, there's no two ways about it. It is 100% there on the surface. Maybe you could sand this or mod it a little to make it more smooth. Not something that I'm brave enough to try myself. A lot of y'all very likely already know this because it's a well-documented fact at this point, but Michael Keaton went on record to say that his boots were the most comfortable parts of his entire outfit. And that's because the bottom section of them were Nike Air Trainer 3s. That's right, Batman wears Nikes. All of the sculpt work that needs to be there is, we've got the wrinkling and then the outline of the swoosh and then the sculpt work around the edge for the sole and the tread on the underside and even the Velcro strap over the top. But there's no Nike logos. There's supposed to be one on that strap, and this is meant to be a swoosh, and there's meant to be one around the back and one on the tread. They decided to cheap out, not pay the Nike licensing fees, and this wouldn't be the first time they've done that. They also did it for Marty McFly from Back to the Future 2 with his Air Mags, and for DX09. None of the Nike stuff was present on these boots either. In fact, it's the same exact sculpt as what we got last time. They have changed up the finish, so they've added in some shiny black to contrast against the matte, and I do like that. But they did away with the silver paint on the buckle, and that I'm not a fan of. Before we move on to comparisons and articulation and whatnot, there's 4 things I want to try out. Number 1, the grapnel line launcher from the museum scene. Number 2, the stopper from the end of the movie. Number 3, flaring his cape out, using the full wingspan thanks to those plastic rods. And number 4, attempting to pop some custom capes on here and seeing what that looks like. This looks really cool. I wish I could leave him like this, but I can't. The rubbery suit is going to split, or crease, or get damaged, or tear if I have his arm like this for a long period of time. Just take your photos, enjoy this for a couple of minutes every now and then, but make sure you're putting him back to stock very quickly afterwards because the last thing you want to do is damage the shoulder area of the suit. Sliding this onto the gauntlet, quite straightforward, just angle the gauntlet so that the fins are facing downwards. Then they'll slide into this slot for the silver piece. You can move this down and wedge his fist on the inside of this front glossy black plastic holder piece. After you have it installed, you can actuate these 2 little line launchers if you want to, but don't forget about the spring that we discussed in the accessory segment. The stopper piece isn't my favorite of his bat gadgets. It is really easy to install. You just have to move his hand up once you have the open palm one on. Then you can wedge it into this little gap on the underside of the gauntlet. Make sure you're sliding it around a touch because if you don't, you just have it in the open crevice. It is going to be quite loosey-goosey in there and it won't stick out as far as it's actually supposed to. Am I ever going to have him wearing this in the collection? No, probably not. What a wingspan. Seriously, this looks very impressive. Just don't do it very often because having his arms up like this holding onto the rods, which are a little bit too long for me, puts a hell of a lot of pressure on the joints at his shoulders. So just like the other poses with his arms facing forwards, do this every once in a while, take your pictures, and then make sure you put him back to stock. Custom cape time. Both of these capes were made by Jaxon Xu. I'll pop his links in the description below. We'll start off with the drape cape and we'll move on to the wired one. This is a perfect replacement for the Hot Toys cape. It's the correct length, it's got the scallops on the bottom, but it doesn't have any wires, so it drapes effortlessly and the Pleats, they line up exactly where they should with the points on the cowl. It's got way more leather grain texture on the surface too, so it looks more movie accurate. If you want to do the half and half look, this cape also does that. You can have one side of the suit fully covered in the cape, and the other on full display. That's the difference when you go custom. This is the wired Jaxon Xu cape. Instead of having a stock one that tries to do everything but fails and ends up being the jack of all trades, master of none, you can get a cape that's fit for purpose depending on what you're trying to do with your Batman. The wires on this cape are extremely strong. It can hold itself up, and you don't even really need to use the rods to achieve the wingspan pose. I prefer a good drape cape over a wired one, it's just my personal preference. But there's no denying that a solid wired cape does help make up for the fact that 89 Batman really isn't very poseable. You can have the cape billowing off in the wind doing something dynamic, and that way he won't just look like a brick standing straight up and down in the collection. For a quick side-by-side comparison, on the left, the new 89 Batman, and on the right, DX09. Try and ignore the custom cape that DX09 is wearing. I had to replace the stock one because time was not kind to it. It was peeling and flaking, it was going absolutely everywhere, so I went with a custom one by Unreal Toys. The new figure is a little taller than the outgoing DX09, but they didn't go too crazy with it, and that's a good thing because Michael Keaton is not the tallest dude in the world. IRL, he's 5'9". So they didn't add a bunch of height to Batman unnecessarily when they switched out the body for this newer, much more proportionate looking one. He's also taller than Batman from Batman Returns. They are working on a 2.0 for the figure on the right, and I can't wait to see it. I just hope, I'm praying that they don't add a bunch of random texture all over the suit, just like what they did with this 89 figure. What a pairing. Mars Toys Bruce Wayne is just such a solid figure. And he's almost the same height to the top of his hair, not counting the bat ears for Batman, of course. So it looks like he could foreseeably be inside the suit. It's not as though they're out of scale alongside one another. Ah, yes, another figure that Hot Toys should have given us. Michael Gough played Alfred from Batman 89 all the way through to the Clooney film Batman and Robin. He deserves to be a 1/6 scale Hot Toys figure. I'm almost glad that they didn't make him though, because Mars Toys straight up cooked with this release. Incredible head sculpt and a ton of accessories. Most people probably are going to grab Bruce Wayne to go with Batman, but if you want to go a different route and have Alfred next to him, that wouldn't be a bad option. Apparently, Jack Nicholson is being very stingy with his likeness rights when it comes to Joker. He's not really approving anything, be it statues, figures, busts, nothing. So we might be stuck with the DX08 as our only version of the purple coat Joker from Batman 89. There is the mime one, and I like that piece, but this is where it's at for me. I don't think you can do much better than this. Just seeing these two standing side by side makes me so freaking happy. It's iconic having 89 Batman alongside 89 Joker. Most of us are going to do this, and now that you see them standing together in front of you, you can probably understand why. What if you don't already have DX08 though? You're a new collector and you desperately need a Jack Nicholson Joker for the collection. This is the Mars Toys version. He's wearing an alternative head sculpt, necktie, and he's got the hat on from the Mr. J mobster version of Jack Napier, also by Mars Toys. But he comes with all of the same stuff that the Hot Toys DX08 did, so you could grab this piece and have him alongside your brand new Batman. He's almost identical. If you're curious to see what the differences are, go ahead and check out the review for the Mars Toys Joker that was filmed quite a while ago now. Going over articulation, I'm a little disappointed, honestly. I was expecting way more ratchet joints than they ended up going with. They stuck with the friction joints for some of the high traffic important areas, and that just means that right now, yes, he'll be able to pose fine, but give him a few years. After a while, he'll be just as hard to work with as the DX09 is. Starting off with the head sculpt, it's on a ball joint at the base of the neck, looking forward to there, looking up to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. His arms go up to there on friction joints, so the suit just pulls them right back down. Going forward and back on soft ratchets, these are nowhere near sturdy enough. There's a butterfly joint at the shoulder that hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow, not on ratchets. This is another friction joint. Then for the wrist peg, it's a ratcheted hinge and swivel. The torso crunches forward on clicky ratchets to there, going back to there, swivel, and pivot side to side. His legs go forward on very clicky ratchets to there, going out to there on softer ratchets, swivel at the upper thigh. Double bend at the knee on the most useless ratchets ever. They are super weak, they barely even hold the leg in position. And then a double ball peg for the ankles, tucked inside some very thick single piece boots. This would be fine if they used that new softer material like what we saw with She-Hulk Daredevil, but they didn't. So we get a little bit of forward and back, a touch of swivel, that's mostly just the boot rotating over the top of the calf, and a teeny bit of ankle tilt. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is, you see, the way they've designed this suit is completely inaccurate. And I'm not talking about the texture, we've already well and truly covered that. What I am talking about is it's not meant to be a single piece of rubber like this. For the screen-used costume, the smooth sections and the bits with wrinkles on them, like for the elbows and down here just below his knee pads, that's meant to be spandex. It's armor plating glued on top of spandex, and if they had have gone that route, this guy would have been number 1, way more accurate looking, and number 2, way more posable because of it. The second annoying thing is, clearly, they didn't learn their lesson from DX09 because they stuck with the friction joints for the elbows. Being Batman, you really want him to be able to bring his fists up, and out of the box you can do it, but after a few years of the joints fighting the rubbery suit, eventually it's just not going to be possible. This joint should have been a ratcheted double bend all day long. The third annoying thing is, how is the likeness worse with the new one? The DX09 was a dead ringer for Michael Keaton in the cowl. Something about the shape and size of the new mask and the new neutral mouthplate just doesn't look like Michael Keaton to me. The first cool thing is the cape is a huge improvement compared to what they gave us last time. Then again, a trash bag would be an improvement over that unmitigated disaster of a cape. This is no Jaxon Xu or Unreal Customs cape. Still, it's an improvement. It's a nice, thin, lightweight fabric. There's wires running through it. There's plenty of it, so you can bring it round the front for that half and half look. Plus, it's got this subtle texture printed on the surface to make it look like it is a thick, leathery style cape. The second cool thing, why is nobody else doing this? This is the DX09 mouthplate in the new cowl, and while it's slightly smaller, so there's a bit of a gap around it, that, to me, actually looks pretty movie accurate. There were certain scenes where Michael Keaton's cowl was more gappy. I popped some blue tack behind it to secure it in place, and now, yeah, I think I am going to display him wearing one of the DX09 mouthplates. The third cool thing is the diorama display base. I've been pretty harsh on Hot Toys diorama bases recently because they've mostly been form over function, but this isn't that, it's actually both. There's a nice flat platform to stand Batman on, or you can have him going up the steps, you can rotate the gargoyle around, or if you don't have room for it, you can remove it entirely. This might just be one of my new favourite Hot Toys diorama bases. Wrapping up on Hot Toys 89 Batman 2.0. Was there really a need for this figure? Honestly, yes. I think so. It's been 12 years since the DX09. We've waited long enough. We've got new paint technologies, better proportioned bodies, bigger, bolder bases. All of that stuff, Hot Toys have been working on, and that tells me that now is the perfect time for this. New collectors are getting started with this hobby every day. This piece is going to be a great option for them instead of having to hunt around for a DX09 that probably is going to be a floppy mess that can't even hold a pose. Look, they didn't quite stick the landing entirely with the weird suit texture and the mouthplate likeness downgrades, but for the most part, he's still a really solid release. He's not this awful piece of shit disaster like some have been saying. Could they have done better? 100%. Is he worth skipping because they didn't? Hell no, he brings enough good new stuff to the table to warrant picking up in my books. Not flawless, but not flawed enough to be a failure, if that makes sense. So, at the end of this, does he resemble my childhood version of Batman, Michael Keaton in the suit? He's not perfectly accurate in every single way, but the resemblance is there. This is very clearly still Michael Keaton as 89 Batman, and that diorama base is freaking fantastic. So, if you are looking for Keaton in this suit in 1/6 scale, you could do a hell of a lot worse than this guy. Chances are you're going to be pretty darn happy. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you're comfortable before buying. I've popped a link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe. We'll catch you in the next video.